Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm joined by Chris McElwain, and we're here, of course, to talk about Brendan Rodgers' first game against Dundee United. How incredible is that, Chris? So this is his first fixture against the Arabs, and we're up at Tannadice, and it's a nice and early Sunday afternoon kick-off. We know what's to be done, and the teams are out. After quite a week where all the focus has been on last week rather than looking ahead to this week, Brendan Rodgers gave his press conference and he covered all the usual questions that you would expect about non-penalty awards, etc. And then he touched on the fact that there might have been a bit of illness in the squad. I think the starting 11, Chris, would suggest that it's not quite a few of our players.
Looks like it, yeah. I think a lot of the changes look enforced rather than tactical, and I think that's, unfortunately, this is how the manager has to earn his bread and butter, right? It's by making these tough decisions. I mean, we spoke about it just in the just prior to going live there, and there's a significant lack of experience in that back line. Maybe Taylor aside. But you're looking at Scales, who's established now, but still relatively inexperienced in terms of tenure and games played. Welsh, very very similar. I think you'd mentioned 60 odd appearances over 6 seasons, which is really just not a lot of game time. Ralston comes in, does a great job for us generally. I actually thought he showed some good mettle midweek, but. Or last week rather, but I would say that the loss of Carter Vickers and Trusty today will be, I think, hopefully won't cause us too many problems, but I think we'll feel it. I think we'll feel it, particularly in the early part of the game as we're trying to get up to speed and get up to pace. Otherwise, pleased to see McCowan coming in. Maeda and Kyogo, what they can do. Hatate, I would like to see an improved performance from him. We know what the captain can do. Yang's the other talking point there, right? We've seen really sporadic flashes of potential with this with this player, but never really seen him do it consistently or be able to sustain the form. And he's been in and out of the team. It's an opportunity for him, maybe the last opportunity for this player to do something in this side. For me, I think it's probably too late as we're going into the January transfer window. I think there's moves that we can and we should make, but it'll be interesting to see how Yang does today.
Well, we'll start off with the defence and we'll work through the entire team. I think the first thing I would say is if you lose Carter Vickers and Trusty, your team's going to be weakened. It's all about whether or not A, the team you're playing can capitalise on it, and then B, the players you bring in are able to step up. Now, this is the thing that I think we should be in a position, Chris, where if Trusty and Carter Vickers are both out for whatever reason, be that injury or illness, we at this stage should have a strong enough squad, right, to bring in 2 defenders. Now, I know that the 2 names I'm about to mention didn't work out at Celtic. One of them's on the bench, but last summer we spent over £7 million to try and alleviate a situation whereby you get 2 injuries or illness to your centre halves, and then you're looking and you're scraping the barrel to bring in X, Y, Z. And I say that, by the way, not to target individuals, but you're scraping the barrel when there's somebody with 9 minutes of football in their legs at the end of December sitting on your bench. And I am, of course, talking about Mike Nawrocki, right? So the 2 centre halves, you look at that. Scalesy, absolutely brilliant. He's been given all the plaudits. He's been in the news for all the wrong reasons this week. I got over it. I think a lot of people will struggle to get over that, right? But you've got Liam Scales in there. But let's remember, 1.5 years in the first team of consistently being in the first team. And this season he's been in and out. His partner, like you said before, Stephen Welsh, 67 games he has played in 6 seasons as part of Celtic's first team under 3 different managers. He's never established himself, right? So he's coming in today a bit cold without that real breadth of experience that you would expect in a Celtic first team at the age of 24, going into a game in the middle or at the end of December. Right back, Tony Ralston, my favourite player, albeit 106 games in 10 seasons. Now, we talk about experience or lack of experience. People might laugh at that. He's been in and around the Celtic team for 10 seasons. He's played for Scotland. He's played at the Euros. But in terms of a defensive unit, this is inexperienced. They've not played games together. This is what we're getting at. And of course, Greg Taylor is the experienced one. And when we look at the squad and we look at what we can do, what we can possibly do in January, all the cliches will be thrown out. I'm sure it's have to do business in January, etc. What happens if Schmeichel's got the bug? You're throwing in Sinisalo and you've got Bain on the bench. So, and again, no disrespect to Sinisalo, but he's untested, Chris. And this is a conversation we had during the week, talking about, right, we've got Welsh and Nawrocki who are not playing football. There's 2 appearances between the 2 of them this season. They're not getting games. So there's talk that Welsh might be moving on. Mechlin are back in. Previously, Udinese, Toulouse, they've been interested in this player. If he leaves and if Nawrocki leaves, bring in one player who can, sit on a bench, Chris, and push for a jersey scale style. You know what I mean? So he's actually pushing for a first-team jersey. And I think the scenario on the left-hand side of defence is the same. When you've got Bernabe and Taylor perhaps leaving the building, bring in one big left-back who's going to be your first pick. You move into the midfield, you've got 2 guys in Odin Holm, you've got Kwon and Loan at Hibs. Move them on. Bring in one midfielder like Lennon Miller, who's actually going to push for a jersey and do what McCowan's done since he came to the football club. And on the wing, you look at the wings at the moment. Yes, you start with Yang, and you've also got Maeda. That's a big drop-off from Kuhn, isn't it? So these are the things. You look at Yang, you look at Palmer, who's found himself back on the bench. You trade him out, you bring one in, and you increase the quality whilst actually cutting the size of your squad, Chris. I think today's a big example of this, and I'm not writing them off, and I'm still confident Celtic will get a result today. But it does highlight that there are some patchy areas in the squad still, Chris.
It does. I think you're right when you talk about the drop-off. You look at the bench, if Yang comes off, your automatic choice there is going to have to be Palmer. I think he's the only natural winger, or otherwise you go for some of the young guys. But I think, January is going to be interesting. We need to go and we need to look for not players to be part of the squad. I think we need players who are going to come in and at the very minimum are going to compete for first-team places. Losing a player like Kuhn, given what he's contributed this season, he's come up with a number of big moments, number of big goals, assists. He's been, had a major purple patch this season so far. So he's a big, big loss. Similarly, Carter Vickers, who I think we'd all agree, no matter who he's partnered up with, he just makes him play better, right? He really does. He's positional awareness. His mentality. I just think the team plays, much, much better and much more assuredly with him at the back. And you're right, AJ is another one. It's going to be a huge loss. So look, it is what it is. The players are, if you're unwell, you're unwell. I think the one saving grace we've got is we've still got a pretty good core of established first team players. They are senior players who know what it takes. Callum McGregor being the most obvious one, but Hatate, he's due, I think, a really good performance. I'm hoping that will come today. Kyogo is a man for the big moments, and we've got Ida on the bench, which is great. So we've got those 2 different type of front forward players, which is great. And Maeda, Maeda is he's I don't know if he's transcending cult hero status at the moment. I don't know. I think we need to create a status all of his own for Maeda because of what he's bringing to this club. He's just a player that I absolutely adore. Everything from the way he conducts himself on the park, off the park, the mentality. I think if you've got Maeda and the team, you just you automatically feel pretty confident. And look, the one other element we're forgetting. Manager's Brendan Rodgers. He knows what it takes to get this done. Yes, it's his first game against Dundee United, right? For me, I'm loving seeing Dundee United back in top division. That's taking me back to, when you had all these established teams and they were, Dundee United were always there, and amongst them the McLeans and all that sort of thing. So, delighted to see Dundee United back up, and I think it'll be a tough game today. But I trust the manager. I think if anybody can get a tune out of these players, it's Brendan Rodgers.
2 great points I'm going to pick up on. The first one is that trusting in Brendan Rodgers, and it's not that blind loyalty kind of aspect of trust the gaffer. Doesn't matter who puts it, of course it does. And every starting 11 can be debated and discussed by the Celtic support watching the game in their garage or in their house or in the stadium if you're lucky enough to get a ticket, or in a boozer if you're even luckier this morning. And in the supporters' buses to and from the game. That's what we do. We talk about the starting 11. It doesn't mean to say we're disrespecting the players that are in it. Now, ridiculiser, here we go. Scales has been our best defender this season. CCV has been very inconsistent. listen, I think that's fair to say he's been inconsistent, but he's had a patchy season also in terms of the injuries as well. So I would throw that in support of Carter Vickers. And by the way, he was an absolute colossus against Rangers last week. So when he's good, he's at a level that nobody else is at. Never gets credit. We're talking about Scales here, crucified for any misstep. Scales is the guy, right, that goes out there, Chris, and he does 12-hour shifts every day, and he brings home the baiting, right, every single day, and he does the overtime, and he makes sure all the bills are paid, and every now and again he goes for a bit of a booze up with his mates, and he comes in at 2 a.m. steaming drunk, and he's not spoken to for 2 weeks for that one incident. That's Liam Scales. It's unfair. Leave the boy alone. He has been the best. There's people in the comments going, yeah, I've been there. Aye, I know what you mean.
I was just thinking, you described a lot of us there, actually. I was getting flashbacks as well.
Jungle Lion. Good job that bug wasn't doing the rounds last week. By the way, it was Jungle Lion, but just knowing the Celtic squad. I had the psychedelic week from hell. I was shaking 1 minute and then seeing funny wee shades in the corner of the room the next. Yes, there has been a bug going around, as Billy Connolly once said famously. Aero 250, I thought Yang looked terrific against Hibs. You know, the thing is, again, and I'll go back to it, there's been moments where Yang has looked a player. I just think that 18 months down the line, you're looking at, and by the way, Rodgers is persevering with him. This is the thing I'll always go back to with Yang. He's not been thrown on the scrap heap. He's not been Odin homed, absolutely train with the Bairns or whatever has happened to home. He's definitely driving the pool car, that's for sure. Yang has been persevered with, and I think that probably lends itself to his attitude. Chris, Rodgers is probably looking up him day to day on the training pitch and thinking that he's really applying himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't be there, and he certainly wouldn't be in today.
Yeah. It makes me think of a point that the Peter Grant, who we were fortunate enough to be in the company of during the week, he made a point about it's actually not, the challenge is not to get into the first team. The challenge is staying in the first team. And I thought that was a really interesting point that he made. And I think with Yang, that seems to be the case. He gets opportunities, whether it's coming off the bench, and sometimes does well with that. But is he doing enough to show that he's got what it takes to be an established member of this side? And I don't think we've seen that yet. Certainly, we haven't seen enough consistency. But you're right. I mean, the manager is, he's keeping him in and around the squad. Is that due to necessity, though? Because, frankly, who else is there? Unless he goes to the youth, who else has he got to call on? And that's why I think we'll get a clearer picture of what the manager thinks of Yang post-January. If Yang's still there, if he's away on loan, or if he's gone completely, then I think that will tell us exactly where he ranks in the system. But look, he's in today. I absolutely want to get behind the kid. I'd love him to, you want to see every player, I'd love him to take his opportunity and show what he can do. Tough game, challenging match with the squad being decimated with illness. These are the chances you've got to take. So go in there, grab it with both hands, and show what you can do.
Well, Michael McDonald, back the team apart. Always have done, Michael, regardless of who's playing, good, bad, or indifferent. But here's a question for you about Yang. You might be showing the right attitude, etc., and that he's been rewarded with a starting place today. Is he any better than Mikey Johnson? Is Yang any better? Is he more effective? Is he less effective? I mean, I'm just putting it out there because he's a guy that was lambasted for seasons upon seasons upon seasons. Yeah. And it's like, right, okay, let's just get right down to the brass bolts of this and say, is he good enough? Is he good enough? We've got 2 big Champions League games coming up. Young Boys has now become not a desirable win. It's a must win. We need to go and win that game. So what if there's a bug? What if there's an injury, etc.? Going into that game, every single player in that core group that you use and you utilise, you have to be able to trust them. You've got to be able to trust them. And this is the thing. So, yeah, big day for Yang. I hope he absolutely smashes it. The other point that you made was about Dundee United. Yeah, for me, Dundee United's a Premier League club. It's a point of reference thing. It really is a point of reference thing. There's people who will go back to the 60s and talk about Dundee and Dunfermline being, top clubs in Scotland. Well, I came through, obviously, watching football in the 80s and the 90s, and Dundee United, particularly in the 80s, were there or thereabouts. Gave us some brilliant memories in finals as well, didn't they? Danielle F., did you have to bring him into today's conversation? There's the big claps in. Kieran Tierney, can't wait to bring him in, to add him to the injury sick list like we have today. There we go.
Harsh.
Yeah, it's a low bowler. Absolutely right. So I was just considering this morning, before we move into the midfield, Chris, in relation to this domination thing. So Big Roy, I don't know if you caught this, but Big Roy was reading an article. Roy Aitken the other night was reading an article backstage, and he was talking about a period of domination. And he says, "Look how incredible this is." And he was talking like it was a conversation we had last week. You know, the amount of trophies Celtic have won. It went back to Martin O'Neill's tenure, and he was talking about that, and then he was comparing it to the amount of trophies any other team had won, and he's going, "How dominant is our Celtic?" To put you into a kind of a mindset here, I was thinking about this morning. We're about to move into 2025. So, you know, very soon we'll be talking about it's been 25 years since Martin O'Neill took over at Celtic. It's been 25 years since Chris Sutton signed for Celtic. It's 25 years since the 6-2 game. I know, mate. I know, it makes you feel old, but we're moving into those realms, right? And then I was thinking to myself, okay, so what's the difference? Because let's say that's a generation in football, 25 years, right? If I'm sitting in 1992, is that wee guy that's travelling through to the games, you know, from Fife with my old man, watching a really, really poor Celtic side. And this isn't a Celtic da moment, right?
No.
Watching a really, really poor Celtic side. 1992. I mean, we were absolutely terrible on the park. Really, really poor on the park. The generational thing that I'm talking about, right? So since Martin O'Neill took over, if I'm sitting in 1992, it's the same distance back that Celtic won the European Cup. Celtic won the European Cup in 67. I'm sitting in 92 and we're rubbish. The stadium's falling to bits, right? We've got no financial acumen in the board, and the future is bleak. Now, that is a generational change and you know, downward trajectory in terms of Celtic. And I know that after the European Cup, we had some great runs right through into the 1970s. Absolutely. I talk about it all the time. But in terms of 2 points in the calendar, 60, 70, 92, that's the same point as 2000 to 2025. And if you're a fan of Rangers and you're looking at generational dominance, look at that point. That's how long we have dominated Scottish football. The same distance from Lisbon to the early 90s when Celtic were putrid. That is how long Celtic have dominated Scottish football. The thing is, though, and this is the difference, right? There's no light at the end of the tunnel if you don't have this financial backer who's going to come in and maybe solve all your financial ails. That's, you know, there isn't that get out. There isn't different schemes that you can tap into that people aren't that familiar with. It might take a wee while down the line to realise that financially maybe they're not as tight as they should be, etc., etc., etc. So Celtic's domination must be enjoyed. But even though we are dominating, Chris, there's nothing wrong with looking at a team. There's nothing wrong with looking at a starting 11 and go, all right, why are we in a situation or why are we in a position where we're having to throw in players who have played one game this season? Why are we having to put somebody on the bench who's played 9 minutes this season? Because these people haven't been deemed good enough up to the end of December to have a first team jersey, Chris. It's as simple as that.
I just think it's the purview of every supporter, you know, and particularly those of us of a certain tenure, shall we say, who have been through those kind of eras where we weren't dominating, you know, so pre-Martin O'Neill. And it was tough to watch, you know, 98 maybe aside, it became really, really tough to watch. And I remember, you know, when we lost the league to Rangers and, you know, the Hugh Dallas, the coin throwing incident, and God, we lost by 20 odd points. It was a horrendous feeling, absolutely horrendous. And you thought, God, how are we ever going to come out of this? You know, this is painful. And so therefore, when you have this dominance, I completely agree with you. You've got to enjoy it. You've got to appreciate it. And I would always urge younger supporters, certainly younger than us, but I'd say, look, appreciate this because, you know, things can change. You know, things can come out of nowhere. They can change. And, you know, sometimes there's things that you have no control over. But you're right. Part of being a supporter is you want to see your club continually improve. You want to see your club maintain dominance and actually build on it. And look, we've had dominance domestically. We haven't had, you know, a lot of success in Europe through that period. Let's be honest. You know, a couple of great seasons. You know, Lenny getting us through to the next round, Strachan getting us through to the next round. Some big moments. You know, Barcelona, Milan, you know, Spartak, etc. But what we've seen now is that when we get it right, and when we get it right in recruitment, when we get it right on the park, you know, in terms of the manager and the personnel, we can go and we can make something happen in Europe, and we're doing it. Okay, people will say the format has enabled us to do it. But the guys have still got to go out there and do it in the park. And I'll argue with anybody, there are no easy games and no easy groups, right? Yes, we may have got a more preferential group compared to what we could have done, but the fact is that there are no easy games and no easy groups. But when you look at the squad today and you look at some of the players coming through, and we've not either seen enough from them, or what we have seen doesn't fill us with confidence. Now, that's not to say we don't trust the manager. We do, and we trust what the manager's going to put on the park and how he's going to set up, etc. And ultimately, he'll be judged on the result. But as you're coming into the January window, you're thinking, okay, come on, we've made progress. Let's keep making progress. You've seen what we can do. We've brought in players. You've backed the manager. We've got a system that seems to be working here. Let's build on it, build on the foundations of success. Let's not sit still and see what happens. And I think that's where the frustration comes in a little bit, or not the frustration at this point, but the anxiety comes in a little bit. It's like, are we going to maintain an upward trajectory, or are we going to see, something happen in January or nothing happen in January for that matter, which gives us cause for real concern going into the second half of the season.
What I liked about the pre-match press conference, because we're not allowed to call it a presser, the press conference with Brendan Rodgers, is he spoke about a meeting that he had on Tuesday with Dermot Desmond, Chris Mackay, Michael Nicholson, and it was a planning meeting for January. So it was interesting that even though he wasn't asked about January, he brought that up. Brendan Rodgers brought that up, and I think it was just to say to Celtic fans, listen, we are working round the clock on trying to improve every single day, and that goes back to that trust thing that we were speaking about before. Some great points coming through in the comment section, and I want to bring a few of them up because, fair play, not seen enough of Yang, right, here you go, to really judge him against Mikey Johnson, right. So Yang, would it surprise you if I told you that he played 31 games for Celtic last season? Today is his 43rd appearance. Nicholas Kuhn has made 41. Have we seen enough of Yang? I think, 18 months down the line, he's played more games than Kuhn. He's made more appearances than Kuhn. And I think it's fine to say, listen, it's a big day for Yang. He's been thrown in the past, not made the same impact from a starting position as he has from the bench previously. That seems to have been an issue, seems to have had an impact. Can he substitute part to play, contribution to make? So we'll see. And I hope he absolutely does it because, going into some of these games, I do think we're a bit short on the wing. And if someone like Yang or someone like Palmer somehow was able to find the form that he had early doors in his Celtic career, great, because it just boosts the squad going into the second half of the season. Bob, Celtic have the hardest problem in football, being almost locked in the old, outdated first 11 or crap mentality because we need to win every game, which means rotation is an issue. Wouldn't it be great, though, if we had, the situation that you've got in the midfield at the moment, Chris, where, any three from 5, and we're all sitting here thinking, I understand why he's picked it. Imagine having that same situation. I think we've got up top in terms of the centre forward, although I think another body would be good in there. But in defence, there's certain areas of the park where I don't think we feel as confident. You can roll the dice in the midfield, and whatever it gives you, you're quite happy to go into the game with that, right?
Yeah.
Not so much at the back. And so I do think it's doable. It's just about making sure that the squad you've got are all contributing to the starting 11 at some point throughout the season. John Francis, Pope Paul McKeown, and by the way, what a picture that is with Chalky. Yang hasn't been rewarded for anything. He's in today because of injury and illness. Nothing more, nothing less. Fair point. At Aero 250 back in again. Can't wait to see Luke again. Let's talk about the midfield then. Love his attitude, his energy, and he's a Tim. Can you ask for more? Can you ask for more? Yes, we can. I want a hat-trick today for Luke McKeown. Obviously formerly of Dundee, and he is now facing Dundee United. Let's bring up the midfield and have a closer look at that then, because as I say there, you can roll the dice and be more or less happy with what you get in the midfield. We've got Callum McGregor, El Capitano, alongside Luke McKeown and Rio Atate. And on the bench, of course, you've got Engels and Bernardo. That's still the strongest part of our squad, isn't it, Chris?
It is, yeah. I like I've said, I think we've got, 5 different players there with 5 different, capabilities in a match. I think today it looks quite attacking. McKeown, for me, has shown that he can, he's almost a kind of box-to-box player. He likes to pick the ball up. He likes to move it forward. Very, very forward-thinking player, which I like. Hatate, similar. I think he's struggled at times with his accuracy this season, and it's been quite frustrating to watch. But I just think, when he gets it right, it can be so good. It can honestly be a game changer. And Cal Mack, I think, you always rely on him to kind of control the play. And if I'm not sure how Dundee United will play today, but if they take the typical route against us, it'll be them sitting back. So we'll have to find those pockets of space. We'll have to find try and get space in behind and utilise the wings, which is where Yang will obviously hopefully turn up and perform. But McCowan, I think his energy, as was mentioned in the comment, will be really key today. He brings some sort of energy, that aggression, that grit, even that little bit of nastiness, and I mean that in the nicest possible sense, but that wee bit of kind of needle in the centre of their park, which I really, really like. So, really looking forward to seeing McCowan. Hope Hatate, is a great game. And you know what, if we are struggling, we've got the option of bringing on Engels. I thought his cameo in parts, against Rangers was really effective. I thought he showed, again, glimpses of, a really good player there. I think somebody mentioned on the group chat, I thought it was a great point. What's his actual position in that midfield? Is he number 6? Is he a number 8? Is he a number 10? I don't think we've quite figured that out yet based on what we've seen. But I think he's, when he really adapts fully to this system and this team and, gets comfortable in his environment, I think he's going to be a cracking player. Bernardo. Bernardo, we could play him in the Champions League, play him in the league. You know what you get from him. I think he's been possibly the best value signing this season because we didn't pay a huge amount for him, and I think his performances have massively transcended his transfer fee. So yeah, looking forward to maybe him coming off the bench if we, whether we're in the lead or not, and seeing what he could do.
I think Bernardo's had a great season so far, Chris. I agree with that, yep. Absolutely. And at £3.5 million, he's looking like something of a snip. I want to highlight also a couple of names on the bench. We continually go on about, bringing in the youngsters. It's not just because there's a novelty factor to it. I keep going on about, we had the Centenary boys the other night, 3 guys who all came through the ranks and played over 1,500 games for Celtic. And I just think that at all points, Celtic need that core group of players, and we've got it today. We've got it in the squad today, who have come through at Celtic. And Peter Grant said the other night that it's not something that new players can't get, Chris. You can still come in, and we can still indoctrinate you into the ways of Celtic and the standards and the histories and the traditions of the football club. But obviously, the guys that have been there from pre-teen, a lot of them, they've already got it. They've already got it in abundance. And there's a couple of youngsters on the bench today. So let's introduce ourselves to Jude Bonner, who's a midfielder, 19 years of age. And you might remember Jude Bonner getting some run-outs in the pre-season as well. So I think he was a player that after the pre-season games we were very impressed with. So it's great to see number 59, Jude Bonner, on the bench. And Colby Donovan, another name that kept cropping up when we were talking about the pre-season games. He did impress. Number 63, he's 18 years of age and he is a defender, and he has been rewarded with a place on the bench. Brilliant in terms of their own experience and their progression. We're banging on about it all the time. Daniel Cummins, hopefully, will get a wee sniff at some point before the end of the calendar year. 25 and 25 he has scored now. We have to also look, of course, at the opposition today. Jimmy Goodwin has lined up as follows. There it is. It's Walton, Strain, Holt, Sevelge, Ferry, Middleton, Stevenson, Fotheringham, Dalby, Thompson and Gallagher. That is your Dundee United team. The other day there I was talking to Jim Warner, says they're doing pretty well. He reckons they've dropped off slightly. We come up against them. I would expect them to shape up the same way that Ross County did the other week, Chris, to frustrate us, to defend against us, to try and stop the ball players. I think what you'll see is they'll try and prevent Hatate from getting the ball. They'll try and prevent Scales from getting the ball, and they'll maybe try and push it onto Welsh. That kind of thing. That's the type of tactics that we tend to get. I would hope that when you look at Ralston and Taylor, when they played most of their games in a start 11 for Celtic, it was under Ange Postecoglou, and it was inverted. They were inverted. Yes. And I know we've not really done that. And Johnston's spoken about this, actually, very subtly, insofar as he prefers the traditional fullback role that he's playing. So we know that Taylor and Ralston can both do it really, really well and flood that midfield today. Yeah. I think it's going to be necessary at times.
It could be, yeah, and I think a tricky away game. I think it's going to be one of these ones where you're going to need that kind of little bit of aggression, a little bit of toughness. So I think not only Ralston, but I think McCowan in there, could take some of the pressure off Hafati, for example. Liam Scales, I think, is going to have to show his leadership, and I think he's going to have to be the camp presence because, as you say, Welsh alongside him is going to have some ring rust. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, I would love to see us be a bit adventurous on the wings and actually, try and cover, any gaps in midfield, by coming inside and playing that inverted role. So Ralston, we know we can do it. He's also someone that's got a decent cross on him at times. So I'd like to see him, maybe get up there, do the overlap and get some, decent crosses into Kyogo. Because one of our biggest frustrations this season has been lack of service to Kyogo. The amount of chances we've had to play the ball to Kyogo and we just don't take them. So, maybe the guys, by virtue of going inverted, will create more chances for the wee fella.
Let's hope so, and let's go to the action prediction before we go, Chris. I can't leave you until you tell me what you think the score's going to be.
I'm never going to plumb for an opposition goal. Well, we've got Big Casper in goal. And Casper I trust. So it's going to be 0 for the home team, but I'm going to say I reckon 3-0 to the Hoops today.
3-0 Celtic. I'll buy that for $1. Right, thanks everybody for getting involved. Join us at half-time, and thank you to Chris McElwain for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Pleasure. One Hoops.